In fact, these three things, they correlate with academic mastery. That's the dirty little secret. Welcome to Schools In, your go-to podcast for cutting-edge insights in learning. From early education to lifelong development, we dive into trends, innovations, and challenges facing learners of all ages. I'm Denise Pope, Senior Lecturer at Stanford's Graduate School of Education and co-founder of Challenge Success.
And I'm Dan Schwartz. I'm the Dean of the Graduate School of Education and the Faculty Director of the Stanford Accelerator for Learning.
Together, we bring you expert perspectives and conversations to help you stay curious, inspired, and informed.
Hi, Denise.
Hi, Dan.
So that's a little switcheroo. We're doing some changes for the first episode of the season. You, my co-host, are actually going to be the first person that we interview.
I'm excited. I'm very honored to be a guest.
Well, I'm very honored to have you as a partner. So for people who don't know, Denise is a senior lecturer, beloved senior lecturer at the Graduate School of Education. She's doing research on AI and education and how teachers and students are responding to it. She's doing work on schools that are exceptionally successful at developing well-being. But today, we're going to talk about her work on Challenge Success. So Challenge Success partners with school communities to elevate student voice and implement research-based, equity-centered strategies to improve well-being and engagement for K-12 students. So my peripatetic friend, are you ready?
I am so ready. Very excited.
Okay. So it's called Challenge Success. Why?
Oh my goodness. Well, a couple of reasons. We came up with Challenge Success because we're challenging this very narrow notion of success. So before I get into that, I want to know, what do you think? What do you think that narrow notion of success is that we might be challenging with our title?
The illusory dream that there's a single thing that will make everything better.
That's partially right.
Which in this case is probably college admissions.
Kind of, yes. So when I do talks all over the place for parents or teachers or students, my first question always to the audience is, how do you define success? And you're right. A lot of them will say college.
You didn't ask me how I would define success.
Dan, how do you define success?
After the fact.
Well, okay, totally not fair.
If something works well, I say, boy, that was a success.
Let's just take a guess. I'm asking a group of parents sitting in an audience at a school, how do you define success for your child? What do you think most of them say?
That they're happy.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
That is the number one thing that adults will say. I want my kid to be happy. Sometimes they'll say, I want my kid to be healthy. I want them to give back to society. I want them to find a partner who's loving. I want them to be a good friend. All these like lovely things, right? And when I ask the students what they think their parents would say about defining success, the students say, get into a prestigious college, make a lot of money, get good grades, right? Very, very different from what the parents say.
So that's fascinating. So how do you explain that?
Well, what I usually do this exercise and then I say to the parents, guess what? The kids are hearing this from all over, but partially from you. So let's talk about some of the things that you do that are messaging almost the exact opposite of what you're trying to do as a parent. Things like the minute the kid comes home from school, the first thing you ask is, how'd you do on the history test? That's sending a message that like the grade on a test is more important than how did you treat a friend today? How exciting was school? Did you do anything cool or creative, right? So we're often messaging the wrong things about success. And we do this other exercise that's really fun, which is, how do you think your community defines success? And for that, they're all ready to just, slam the community as being so worried about these extrinsic external things like grades and popularity and money and college. And then I say, well, the kids kind of think that you believe it, right? So why are we called Challenge Success? We are challenging that really narrow notion of success, that you have to do this, 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 and this, and then poof, you're going to be successful and happy. There's a quote from my book. One of the students that I shadowed said, "We don't go to school to learn, we go to get good grades, which brings us to college, which brings us a high paying job, which brings us to happiness." So it's like that really narrow, linear notion of success. And that if you get a bad grade or you don't get into XYZ school or you don't get that job, your life is over or you're going to be poor or destitute or unhappy.
Okay. So you beat us down, Denise. What is the correct definition of success?
Well, I don't know that there's a correct definition. We do like people to think about what is best for them and their circumstances. But what we know from the literature is there are three pillars that pretty much we talk about all the time at Challenge Success and we measure and look at. And one is well being. You have to be healthy enough to get out of bed in the morning and go to school. You can't be exhausted. You can't be completely anxious or depressed if you're going to be successful in school and out. So, well being is one. The second one is engagement. You want to like what you're doing. You want to be interested in it. You want to think that what you're doing has meaning and value in your life. And the third is belonging, which is you need to feel like you have someone who has your back, that you feel known, that you feel safe, that you feel like you're part of a community. And that forms a little acronym, well being, engagement, belonging, called WEB. And that's how you remember it.
Okay. I like web better than SOS.
Yeah,
Uh,
so do I.
so when I think of success, and I'm thinking about my kids, I think of very long-term goals. Whereas these are all really proximal. It's like well-being right now, engagement right now, belonging right now, right? So it's kind of a different framing of success, or these are enablers of some future goal of success that I may not know what it is.
Right, they're foundational, right? If you think, back to Maslow's hierarchy, right? The bottom is safety. You can't get to enlightenment until you have safety and belonging. So you got to start out like with the basics. If you're exhausted, it's not going to work now or later, right?
Okay, but it should be called challenge enabling success
Yeah.
or something.
Okay, that's just not as catchy.
Okay. So how do you come up with these three? Right. And, good grades. Oh, self-efficacy could have been one. You feel like you're competent, things like that.
Absolutely. So what we've done for years and years, we've been around for over 20 years now, is we've given these surveys and we've done quantitative surveys and we've also collected qualitative research. And we've done this now for 15, 20 years. The survey started a little bit after we got started. 350,000 middle school and high school students, 500 different schools, public, private, charter, you name it.
Geez,
And
do you feel guilty about all the time you've taken from the 350,000 kids to fill out your survey? That's a lot of survey hours.
here's what we say. Here's what we say to the students. If you do this, we promise we will not only get the results back to your school, but you will know the results as well. And you will be able to use these results to make change. So we're finding out, how exhausted are you? Let me tell you, kids are exhausted. Over 90% of our sample qualifies as sleep deprived. Our average amount of sleep is 6.8 hours a night, and the average teen needs between 8 and 10 hours a night. We've got a huge group just getting 4 or 5 hours a night. So, well being is more than just sleep. There's 80% are experiencing self reported chronic stress, um, headaches, ulcers, difficulty falling asleep.
So you ask them questions like, do you have headaches? Is that how you find?
We'll say, in the past month, how often have you experienced the following symptoms? And we'll ask them about their top sources of stress, which, interesting, is grades, tests, assessments, homework, workload, right? It's not romantic involvement. It's not sick parent. It's not parents getting divorced. The top one as a severe source of stress that kids say is always about load and grades and tests,
Wow.
because this is their world.
Wow.
And so that's so on the well-being side, we know that there's issues. On the engagement side, we also know there's issues. Over half of them are basically not engaged. They're just going through the motion. It's what we call doing school. And we don't ask them, are you engaged in school? We ask them lots of different questions that get at this concept of engagement.
Examples of a question?
Yeah, so in the engagement world, we kind of look at engagement in three parts, and I call it the ABCs of engagement. The A is affective. So are you enjoying it? Are you interested in it? Right? The B is behavioral. Are you doing it? Are you putting in effort? And the C is cognitive engagement. Do you find it meaningful? Do you think what you're doing is helping to build your skills? Do you see purpose in your learning? And so we have questions on the
So,
A, the B, and the C.
like, do you ask the question in algebra class as opposed to like when they're in their project based class?
Totally. You can find out about engagement in different classes. You can find out about engagement in different parts of a class, right?
Mm,
When are you
mm.
most excited about what you learn? A lot of times they'll say when I'm with my friends, when the teacher's excited, when I'm interested in the topic, right? We've got crazy
Sure,
data.
sure. No,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So for engagement, I mean what's kind of crazy is 10%. Now think of that sample size, 350,000. 10% are disengaged. They're not enjoying it, interested in it. They don't think it's valuable or meaningful, and they're not doing it. That's a lot of kids.
You
And
said 10, you said
50%,
10%? 10% are
10%
completely disengaged.
completely disengaged.
Yeah.
And then 50% are just what we call doing school. They're behaviorally engaged. They're doing the work, but they don't enjoy it. They don't like it. They're not interested in it. And they don't think it's valuable or meaningful to what they do. So we call them like little robo students. They're just kind of going through the motion.
So I'm a parent and I hear this and I say, yeah, my school experience was like that and I turned out just fine.
Yeah.
Right. So this is part of school is you just got to do it. You got to memorize that poetry that you're never going to use.
Yeah.
That's just part of the deal.
Take your medicine. Shut
Yeah.
up and take your
So,
medicine.
but this drives me nuts. When I suggest that we could change education, the number one response is, I went to school just like that and I turned out fine.
Right. So I have
So,
a couple of different ways of responding to that parent who have definitely come up to me and said these
yes, I
things.
imagine.
Okay, so one is, would you go to your cardiologist and say, "You know what? I don't like this newfangled stuff that you're talking about. Just let's go back to leeches. Let's go back to the old days. Don't give me the new stuff," right? No one's going to question the newer procedures of a medicine professional. But because everyone's been to school, been through school, and think that the way they went through it is right, and they blame their success or they give credit to their success for that, they feel like they can question our field. They also don't know that we are a field and we study this and we put people in MRI machines and watch what parts of their brain light up when they're doing problems. Like we actually are evolving and school should not look like when you, sir, went to
But,
school. And I say that with
but,
like
but,
great respect to the
but Dr. Pope, I turned out fine.
you did.
Even the leeches worked.
Yes, the leeches work. But if I told you that we could do it in a way that you also didn't have to hate it, that you didn't have to suffer, that you didn't have to be bullied, that you didn't have to feel isolated, that you actually could learn in a way that would help you remember not just the words of the poem disembodied, but why you use it and why we need to study the humanities and get you excited. See, the bigger problem now is we are having a lot of issues with attendance. We have
Mm,
kids who don't want to come to school, who are dropping out of school. We have kids who are really suffering in school. So this not just feeling like they don't belong, which is about a third of our sample, but we have kids, particularly students of color and gender diverse students, who are actively feeling bullied. So they don't want to go to school. It's not just a neutral, it's actually a place that's hurting them.
yeah, yeah. So let's we've done well-being, and that's sleep, stress. We've done engagement. Like, are you actually minds on, or are you just going through the motions, or just not showing up? And then belonging. What is belonging?
Yeah, so we have lots of different questions on this. So we have one set of questions that ask, is there an adult at the school, any adult that you feel you could go to if you had a problem? So we're looking at student teacher relationships, which we know are really key to school success. And the average that we have is about 70% of the students feel like they have an adult to go to. If you're a glasses half full kind of person, you might think, well, that's not bad. But this is a school. We ask them, any adult at the school, right? It should be 99.9%. And I've had to report back to schools as low as 50, 56% of the kids feel like they have an adult to go to. We ask
Wow.
them, do they have at least one buddy that they feel they can go to with a problem? That's usually higher. That's usually in the 80 percentile. And then we also ask a lot of questions like, people here respect me for who I am, or I feel like I can really be myself at this school. So a typical belonging scale. And about 33% of them are feeling like they don't really belong, at least in some of their classes or in some of the places at school.
So that's painful.
Yeah,
Tough to spend all day at a place where you're sleepy, you're not really engaged, and there's no reason that you want to be there because nobody else really cares about you.
very depressing.
That's horrible. My God, what's happened to our school system, Denise? I now understand what the challenge is. Like you've been doing these surveys a long time. Has there ever been a period where they're going in the right direction, or are we just slowly rolling into a dark, dismal high school with dirty bathrooms and snotty kids around corners?
So some of the things have been very stable. We
Yeah.
did a report for the US Surgeon General looking at longitudinally at the data. And some of the things have been very stable, like sleep, right?
Mm.
They've always been sleep deprived. They will continue to be sleep deprived. Part of that is just the institution of school itself. It starts too early for these nocturnal adolescent brains that really have different circadian rhythms than the rest of the world. And we work on that, right? We
Yeah.
ask them to change start times, we ask them to change bus schedules, et cetera. So part of that isn't surprising that that's been sort of a straight line almost longitudinally. We do see a change after the pandemic that engagement numbers got even lower and they're starting to creep back up again. That gives me some hope. Yes, the pandemic was a really tough time for kids and schools were closed. It's really hard to get someone engaged through a screen, right? We're starting to see engagement numbers tick up again, slightly.
But not through a podcast. All you out there in the audience, thank you for being engaged.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You're listening and you're driving your truck and you're just loving us.
Okay. Belonging. So belonging is kind of a new construct. We didn't used to talk about belonging 10, 15 years ago.
Right. There's more, I mean, even folks here at Stanford who study it very, very in depth know it's important. We're looking at it and trying to help find ways to do it, even little ways.
But
Yeah.
no, the question are people feeling more alienated than they used to be? Less
Um,
belonging,
Certain groups are. Right?
marginalized groups.
Marginalized groups are. Some traditionally marginalized groups have felt this all along. Students of color, traditionally students who identify as female. We're seeing a newer group or a larger group, I should say. They've always been traditionally marginalized, but gender diverse students, more and more, are reporting much lower scores than the rest of the kids.
Okay, we've hit rock bottom. We know the challenge. Now it's time to figure out how we can do something about it. Do you want to take all three webs at once, or you want to pick them off one at a time? Are you like setting up therapy sessions for children? Like, how do you do this?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but the way that Challenge Success does it is we work with the school and the school policies and practices. So we're trying to change things at the school level, whereas other people might come in and do individual work with kids and counseling and try to get more, money for healthcare and
Right.
all that kind of stuff.
So a later start time would be a school level action.
Exactly, a later start time.
Engagement, like how do you do that at the school level? You throw out candy in the middle of class, like
Yeah, no, we try not to just bribe students to learn.
okay, I
Um,
like it. Bribing to learn. Somebody needs to write a chapter on that.
Yeah, I know, bribing. You might like that, Dan. No, so what we know from research is there's lots of ways to engage kids in classes, and how you do it is interactive learning, small group work, some of the stuff that you've studied, Dan, right? Gamification, bringing in outside technology that's exciting, and also helping them think, right? Not just standing up in front of the class, giving a lecture, or saying, open the textbook, turn to page 3, and then answer these questions.
So we're trying to make the educational experience more interactive. Is that kind
More,
of the
more interactive, giving students, we have a little mantra called voice choice, revision, and redemption. Voice means they want it to be about what interests them, right? So personalize it, bring it, help them understand why they need to learn this in the first place and how it relates to their lives immediately and also in the future, right? Choice is giving little baby choices here and there, like a couple math problems from this section, a couple math problems from this section, instead of slogging through all 60. That would be a little example. Revision is how many of us just take a test and then get the grade and then you move on to the next unit? Like there's not learning happening there. And we've had shows on this about assessment. So revision is giving them the opportunity to reflect on what they've learned, revise the test, the paper, the project, whatever, with feedback and scaffolding. That's more how people work in the real world.
What I get peer review and they want me to revise. It's like the least engaging thing on earth.
No,
Or is
well,
it-
but yes, but we want you to learn, right? So your peer review is probably not engaging, but giving a kid a second chance on a test or a quiz or on a paper is huge.
oh, I
Is
see.
huge for that kid.
I
It
see.
reduces stress, right?
I
It
see.
gets you more like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, okay, I get. And then here's the redemption part that you'll like. In the world of school, you might never turn in your homework, but you've got good grades on your tests and quizzes. Doesn't matter. You have all those zeros on your transcript. It's going to add in, and you're not be able to redeem yourself. You're not going to be able to get to that grade or that thing that you want, right? So we want voice choice, revision, and redemption. We want kids to be able to redeem themselves. Maybe you eliminate zeros. Maybe you don't grade homework. If the kid, especially if the kid's doing well on the test, maybe you rethink your policies around assessment. So we work in certain categories around schedule, pedagogy, assessment, SPA, climate of care, C, and then the E is educating parents. So that spells out space.
So how about belonging? Like, how do you make people be nicer?
It's not so much being nicer.
Well, to make a context where I can belong, the people around me have to be kind of nice, don't they?
Well, they have to accept you for who you are, and
Yeah.
you have to feel it. You can't just say, "Poof, someone's gonna be nice to me." You have to feel like you belong. You have to feel that you're a valued member of the community. And it's actually easier to do than you would think. We just have to help teachers remember why they're teaching in the first place, right? It's about the kids. It's about the relationships. So in a busy world where you've got like, 8 classes of kids coming in every day, can you get to know the kids more as individuals? Can you set up advisory periods where there's one adult and a handful of kids and you get to know each other and you move through all 4 years with them, let's say? Can you greet them at the door? Can
Yeah,
you
I
show,
know this one. So there
yeah,
was I was a substitute for a while in Los Angeles. And you get a phone call at 5 a.m. that you have to go like 2 hours away. And I learned stand at the door and greet each kid and look in their eyes,
right?
and then you can talk to them later. Otherwise,
Yeah.
they're sort of alienated.
Show that you care. Even things like moving the test on a day that when they're not ready to take it, like the students really appreciate you dialing in and understanding what they're going through. So we have teachers shadow students from bus stop all the way through all the classes and then, go home and attempt to do the homework. We have all sorts of exercises that we ask people to do. We have an I wish campaign. I wish my teachers knew. We've got
Denise,
lots of ways to build belonging.
so your solutions are interesting. They're not like blow up the system, right? So a lot of people who want to fix schools say we need to build school a brand new way. Yours is more, these schools are here. They're giant enterprises, these urban districts, billions and billions of dollars. We can go in and do, things that are executable within the system that you've got. I mean, some are tough, like changing the bus schedule. But
Well, some things that I think are easy are not, and some things that I think that are tough are
yeah,
easy. It depends on the school. But I would say it doesn't make sense to blow up a system when we are the second biggest system next to healthcare in the
right,
United States, right? Like,
right.
I would love to blow up some things. And I have some examples of schools that have been blown up and are doing great, but it's just not realistic on a scale level.
Yeah.
Whereas these changes hopefully are.
I see that you could, a lot of them you could implement. They're just not huge. I think the testing thing may be tough, but so I'm a parent and my kid's not sleeping enough. I'm worried he's sort of just doing school and I don't know, he sort of belongs, but then sometimes. And so what do I do? Do I call up the school principal and say, web, implement web? Like, what do I do?
I don't think that's gonna get you that far. The person might think you're kind of a Looney Tune if you just call up and say web. There's lots of things you can do at home, right? So much of what we think is out of our control because our kids are in school for so many hours a day. If you really look at the whole schedule, you do have a lot of control over what happens to your child from, 3 p.m. to 7 a.m., right? So sleep is a huge thing. How you talk about school is a huge thing, right? Are you only worried about grades? Are you only messaging that you're worried about grades? Are you only talking about college? Are you obsessed with the status of other people's kids getting, awards and accolades? And the way you talk about learning with your kid, it actually is really important. So, just a quick another mantra. I'm like big on mantras today. It's not what you earn, it's what you learn. So, as a parent, you kind of say,
Nice.
okay, right? Like,
Nice.
hey, mom, I got a B minus. The parent can like go crazy, or you can say, hey, let's look at this. What'd you learn from this?
So Denise, could you make some bumper stickers? Like I'd like. No, I have meetings with faculty and they talk about what success out of college looks like,
Mm.
and they often talk about money, and I'm just sort of like, well, as a philosophy major, I'm deeper than you are. That's my success out of it.
I mean,
So
but you could be joking, but like what they're saying now, we know that the correlation between happiness and earnings, there's a plateau after your basic needs are fulfilled,
yeah,
right?
yeah. No, there's quiet. Everybody has quiet desperation, but no, that's interesting. It is. How about me sort of trying to get the school to do something?
Well, we would love that.
Does that work? Or
What we say to parents is if you're noticing a lot of stress at home, if you're noticing homework overload and it's a battle, if you're noticing that your kid really doesn't want to go to school, we do want you to reach out to someone at the school, whether that's a teacher, whether that's a counselor, probably not the principal as a first move, but the school has no way of knowing what your at home life looks like, right? So
right?
if they need to know and you need to bring them into the equation and then together you can find a solution.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Yeah, just give them a heads up.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, thank you, Denise, for sitting in the hot seat today. I hope you liked the turnaround.
Oh my gosh, I did, but Dan, can I put you a little bit in the hot seat? Usually, I say, Dan, as always, what are some takeaways? So now I think it's only fair, Dan, as always, what are some takeaways that you heard from me?
Oh, that Denise Pope rocks. This is,
Oh, I like that
yeah,
takeaway.
yeah. Uh, you know, uh, uh, Everybody wants what you're describing. Kids with well-being, kids that are engaged, kids who feel like they belong. And I think you sort of let the significance of that fade into the background as you're trying to solve all these other things, like getting the kid out of school on time, or there's this one problem they didn't get. So kind of bringing it to the forefront and reminding people these are just like things that you want for your child, or that your child wants, or as a teacher, this is what you want. I think that's a big deal. And then sort of saying, and you know what? It's not that hard to get a lot of these things. I like the web. I like the three things. Everybody wants them, but we forget about it because so much else is going on. How about you, Denise? What are your takeaways as Dan
Yeah.
is a podcasting host?
You did a great job,
Thank
first of
you,
all. I
Denise.
really no, I mean it, and great job on the takeaways because that really I mean, we're trying to get people to kind of step back and, like, look at the big picture. In the grand scheme, you're not gonna remember your kid's grade of C plus in the math class, and it's not gonna affect their life, so
Nice.
Oh, do
I,
you?
I,
Do you remember you probably remember your worst grades, but foundationally, in the big picture, in the grand scheme,
I
you
know.
want someone to be healthy, you want someone to feel like they belong to a community, and you want them to be kind of excited about what they do every day.
Right. And then it doesn't displace learning. It helps it. It's you're not
100%.
like spoiling the kid by not having them learn.
No,
Right.
in fact, these 3 things, well-being, engagement, and belonging, they correlate with academic mastery. That's the dirty little secret.
Well, so Denise, thank you. And thank all of you for joining this episode of School's End. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune in. I'm Dan Schwartz.
And I'm Denise Pope.